This is the Confident Live Marketing Podcast. Confident Live Marketing Podcast with Ian Anderson Gray, helping entrepreneurs level up their impact, authority and profits through the power of live video. Gain confidence in front of the camera, confidence with technology, and confidence with the content and marketing.
Together, we can go live!
Hello everybody, welcome to episode 12 of the Confident Live Marketing Podcast. I am Ian Anderson Gray and I'm so excited that you're here to listen to the show. This show is sponsored by my good friends at Content10x.com. Content10x are experts in content repurposing. They provide a full end-to-end repurposing service. So if you go live on Facebook or whatever platform, they will then take that video, the pre-recording of that, the pre-recorded video that it ends up becoming, and explode it across the internet for you into a plethora of different content, saving you time and helping you build your business. And they've also got an awesome blog and podcast packed with great advice on all things repurposing. So I'm really excited to have my good friend Andy Lambert here on the show. Andy has over 10 years experience of creating markets, building profitable businesses and leadership roles in industry-leading SaaS organizations. One of the founding team of ContentCal, a social media marketing technology software that since launching in January 2017 has grown to being used by over 25,000 businesses in 140 countries. It's great to have you here, Andy. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you, Ian. It's an absolute pleasure to be on. I've been threatening to do this for a while, so it's great to be here.
We have been threatening to do this for a while. Well, it's one of those things. This podcast has been threatening to happen probably over a year, maybe more than that. And one of the first episodes I produced was actually on why this podcast almost never happens and the art of procrastination. So anyway, you're here now. So
I am indeed. And actually, a bit of a plug for your sponsor, because that Content 10X thing was something I was going to talk about today, because it's a very, very valuable principle. So, love it.
Absolutely. Well, repurposing is so important. But we're going to be talking about that, but we're going to be talking particularly about planning that content, because something that I've learned over the years is it's so easy just to not have a plan and just to post out whenever you think about things. But actually, when you have a plan, when you have a bit more of a strategy, it works so much better. You're focused a lot more on the kind of content that's going to resonate with your audience. So I'm excited to talk to you about that today. I gave a bit of a bio on your background, but anything else you would like to add to that? How did you get started in this whole world? And also, can you remember how we first met?
I can indeed. Very early days. So, how we got started, and then we'll come on to how we met and this beautiful relationship started. We're initially a social media agency about 4 or so years ago. So content planning was our thing. So for all of our clients, we would create them a content plan, separating them into themes, into different channels, into different objectives, audiences, that kind of thing. Typically, there was no better way to plan it than on a Excel spreadsheet or Google Sheet if we were feeling particularly glamorous, so we could send it to our clients for approval. And that's obviously a little bit unwieldy after a while. So basically, we are an example of scratching your own itch, so to speak. So we built a product for ourselves, of which we launched to the market, as you said, in early 2017, and seemingly our pain was shared by others. It's grown fairly well. And, in very early days, actually pre-launch, so I think it must have been around November or something 2016, where I saw a review that you had done, 7 reasons not to use Hootsuite. I think that article has been haunting you ever since. And I just wrote to you because the article was really informative, and it was, it's rare that you see an article from that perspective. You would say like, oh, Hootsuite's incredible, or this product's incredible. Actually, maybe consider it from another angle. So I really liked it. And plus, when I had a look at the stats on the article, lots of people read it. So I thought, I wonder what Ian makes of our product. And, I travelled up to see you, had a coffee, and here we are.
Yeah, there was really good fun. I can't believe it's been just 2 years. I mean, it feels like, in some ways, it doesn't feel that long ago, but it feels like Content Cal's been a thing for a lot longer than that. I'm sure you would say the same.
Yes. Yeah, I had a full head of hair before starting this. So no, it does. Yeah, it's a really weird thing to explain because it feels like it's been a lifetime, but at the same time, it feels like yesterday. So, but I guess that's the nature of anything in the world of small business and social media as well. It's just everything happens at lightning pace. I probably shouldn't say that actually, considering what's happened to your internet. Sorry.
Well, that's true. Just if you're listening to the podcast, we were talking about this before we started recording, and this was that my about 10 meters away there was a lightning strike, and the whole street's internet went down, and I've only just got it back up and running. So yes. Anyway, enough of that. So yeah, it's funny, and you've reminded me really about that article that I wrote probably back in 2012. I think it's like that's when I wrote the 7 reasons not to use Hootsuite article, and it all came about really as I had nothing against Hootsuite. I just had a few frustrations about it. So I thought, well, everyone else is writing about how amazing it is. Let's focus on maybe what isn't quite so good about it. And so I wrote an article, and I think I started with 4 reasons and then extended it to 7. And yeah, it just, for some reason, it really resonated with people. And I've created other articles out there on different tools and expanded on that. And as a result of that article, really, that launched my speaking career, and it really launched my business. So it just shows you the power of content, that particularly evergreen content, and just investing that time at the start can really, really help in the long term for your business. So it just highlights the power of content, doesn't it?
Oh, it really does. It really is the textbook example, really. And and a textbook example of why SEO is important, because I remember now how I found the article. I typed into Google Hootsuite pricing, and that was the first organic result underneath the PPC stuff. So that's impressive SEO work there, Ian. So accidentally or not, I don't know.
Well, yeah, I want to be honest about this, because I think a lot of people get overly concerned about the technicalities of SEO. And I'm not knocking that. I think there is absolutely, we should be looking at the technicalities of SEO. But I'll be totally honest, I didn't think about that at all when I was writing those articles. I was focused on quality and delivering value. And it was the same with my article on Facebook Live. I don't want this to end up being a conversation all about my articles, by the way, but just to use these as an example, that the Facebook Live article, again, I was just wanting to deliver value and make something that was much more detailed than what I saw out there. And that did really well from an SEO point of view. So yeah, I think when it comes to that, creating valuable content, whether it is live video content, or podcast or blog posts, it just needs to be really valuable. Then people will share it out, and yeah, you'll do well. That's the simple solution anyway.
Yeah, it's a perfect example, really, because as we spend so much time in this industry, everything's around like hacks or shortcuts or the ways to manipulate things for a certain result. And it's something I've never subscribed to, really, because as long as you're planning things well, i.e. the audience that you're talking to, the objective behind what you're saying, and then you create a huge amount of value because you've established a gap in the market or gap in the audience, then ultimately it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more people read it, more people to share it, then the better it's going to rank. So really it's a perfect, even though you don't want to talk about your own articles, it sets the scene perfectly for what we're going to talk about. And it's nice to keep things real sometimes, where that's the beauty of content, and sometimes we get lost in technicalities and hacks and shortcuts.
Oh yeah, I think we all probably, or most of us at least, we do like the idea of hacks and tips and techniques and all those kind of things. And there's sometimes there are some little hacks that you can do, but it doesn't get away from the fact that a lot of this is hard work and a hard graft. That is one reason why I do love live video. I think, creating a blog post like that takes a huge amount of effort. Whereas with a live video, like what we're doing today, we're creating content. And then from this, I'm then able to repurpose this into a podcast and then into a blog post, which is far easier than just starting from scratch. So that's something I'm a big believer in. That's the I had a preposition problem then. My goodness.
Nice alliteration, though. I think you've redeemed it with your alliteration there.
Thank you. That's good. Oh dear. Anyway, right. So when it comes to planning, well, first of all, I want to ask the question: why plan content? Why should we be planning content and not just, doing it when we feel like it?
I mean, it all comes down to the fact that, there's nothing in life that doesn't work better with a plan. That's typically the way that I would see it. But as I said a second ago, the point is that for you to deliver content of value, this doesn't happen by accident. It happens as, it's a deliberate purpose. So if we were taking your Hootsuite article, it had a distinct purpose because Hootsuite were the de facto choice in the market, and you wanted to explain the reasons why it potentially isn't as good as everyone thinks, right? So, and the same with Facebook Live, there's an educational gap around it, so you establish the need there. That only, that doesn't happen by accident. That happens through kind of a deliberate approach to something, whereby you understand what your business is about, you understand the audience that you're talking to, you understand the gaps in their potential knowledge and the ways that you can fill those. So in order for you to do that, you're going to need to plan it. But then, of course, no one's going to be able to make something a success if you do things one-off. Success is a cause of habit, right? So whether it's, building a business or, doing anything in life, success is a result of a regular achievement. Because fundamentally, if someone watches this, goes away, feels inspired, creates one Facebook Live video or creates a big long form piece of content, the chances of that suddenly becoming a viral hit like your Hootsuite article was, the chances of that are incredibly low. So the ways to improve your chances of success is by changing your behavior, and the behavior to make it a consistent, deliberate process. So basically, that's my pitch on why plan.
Well, I think you've used the word that I love, and that's consistency. And I think that's how do you become consistent? One of the best ways is to plan. If you don't plan, then you will not be consistent. And this is one of the reasons why I think I've failed so often to produce consistent content, because I just didn't have a plan. And it's the same thing I see with my clients and with my audience and people out there. They just are worried about or frustrated with themselves that they're not consistent with producing content. And it wasn't until I actually had a plan and I planned it all out that I was consistent. And wouldn't you agree with that? Just that the consistency is the key.
It is. It's absolutely the key. So, and planning sometimes feels a bit onerous to begin with, right? Because you think, okay, so I've got to design all of this, build all this, and then I've got to deliver on it. But the point is that, things and progress and consistency doesn't have to be massive step forwards on every day. The fact that every day you're making progress towards a certain objective, then that is consistency. But it's a behavioral change that you can stay consistent with. I think one of the key things that we often talk about when I'm kind of discussing content planning with people that want to do it better, one of the challenges that I have is like whatever tool you use, whatever process you use, however you plan, just make sure that you can do this on a regular basis, whether that's daily, whether it's weekly or monthly, whatever makes most sense. Because while I see a lot of people do, with all best intentions, create a massive plan, I've seen some incredibly well color-coded, organized strategies, but ultimately they die off after a month. And that's an issue. So whatever you create needs to be manageable, around all of the other tasks that you need to do as part of your business or your daily life. So We can talk about that some more, but that consistency that consistency is the result of being realistic as well.
I love that. That's so important because, again, think about my own experience that I've probably overcomplicated things, and I've created this master plan that's going to be amazing, and I'm going to have like 7 live shows per week, an Instagram live, and then a LinkedIn live, and then like 500 tweets per week, and it all sounds great, but actually it's just too much, and it's just not necessary. It's always best to start small, maybe focus on one thing and do that consistently, unless you have a big team. But even if you have a big team, wouldn't you agree that, at least focus on doing one thing well first, and then over time build it up and see what's working, look at the analytics and the reports, and check what's actually resonating with your audience too.
Exactly. Sometimes it's even harder in a bigger team, to be honest. So starting small so you can celebrate those smaller wins, because the wins might be as small as saying, this week I'm going to go live once, for example, right? And I'm going to talk about this theme once. Or this week I want to be able to start, a Facebook Live challenge, for example, and I want to gain 10 followers. That, if you do that, even though it might feel like you're not making massive progress, but very quickly, suddenly, not very quickly, after, 6 months or so of doing it and being consistent, you'll look back and go, I'm really pleased I started there or started then, because suddenly things have started ramping up. A good example is that we were just looking at our Facebook group that we set up just, as a little test thing, probably about 3 months ago. And we just have, it's a daily consistent process just to create some content in it every day and engage with the community in it. And looked in today, and we barely put any real effort in, I would say. We've just been consistent once every week. And there's 500 members in that group. And suddenly you're like, oh, okay, I'm really pleased. We built a foundation now. So there's a lot more you can start doing to take the second phase. With those 500 people in that group, we can start running some challenges with them and start doing some more Facebook Lives, for example, because suddenly there's an audience there. But all of this, it's like a stepped process whereby your consistency in the first couple of months has just been about building a foundation. The next level, you think, okay, next month I want to be able to to do this. And I think one of the things with planning is that we can get carried away by thinking, okay, well, in 5 months I want to create or have 10,000 followers. It's really difficult for that to motivate daily activity. As a high level goal, that's kind of fine. But I would always stick to just create a plan for the month ahead, because the data, as you've already pointed out around analytics, the data is going to tell you something potentially different to what you believed initially. So creating a month plan that you can stick to isn't too onerous, and you commit to building on that plan month on month, then you're going to move forward.
That's great. Yeah. So don't just, it's not a bad thing necessarily to have a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year plan. But when it comes to content, focusing on maybe the next month and looking at it from that point of view. So are there different stages in planning? If you're starting with a blank canvas, you've got the vague idea that you want to go live. You people who've been listening to this podcast for the first, we're on episode 12. So hopefully I've convinced people of the power of live video. Otherwise I may as well give up now. But people see that as a really positive thing, but they don't really know more than that. They haven't really thought about what they should do and when they should do it. What would be a good place to start, and what are the different stages of planning content?
So first one, and lots of people say this, and I'm sure there's probably something I could share visually, maybe after this, or send it out to your subscribers, is what we would call your persona. So we have a very clear person that all of our content is created around. So that persona is the most important thing that drives all of our content and all of our planning, because essentially anything you're creating is built for that someone. So a persona would contain things like, is that a male or female? What's the age demographic, for example? Where are they located? What are their challenges? What are their fears? What are the things that they enjoy? Those kind of things. And all of that will be informed either by you doing a survey, or you might have that information already if you're a slightly larger business. For example, we're not a large business, we have 25 employees, but all of that information is in our CRM. Right, so we can just pull that out, and at the beginning of the quarter, we know exactly who our kind of customer demographic is. So that informs everything that we do, because essentially we're talking to someone, right? Content is being consumed by someone like you or I on the other end. So that content people need to consume is, it's tailored for a human who is going to have the same attention deficit and distractions that we do, right? Your content's competing against all the other noise in someone's daily life. So that helps you make sure it's incredibly specific. Now, once you've created that persona and you know exactly that, Ian is our customer. It's always good to give them a name as well, so it kind of brings it to life. So Ian is our customer, prospect, or whomever. That is who we're talking to at the end of this Facebook Live. People that have similar challenges, fears, objectives to Ian. And then that informs that next phase. So I don't know if you want me to go on and chat around that, but
Yeah, do go through them.
Yeah, so once you've got your persona nailed, then it's on to the topics or the themes. So we're big proponents here at Content Cal about categorizing your content into certain themes, because that persona is going to have a multitude of different interests. So if I use Content Cal's business as an example, so we have a persona which is slightly biased towards female, 25 to 35. We know they pretty much spend most of the time on Facebook to consume their information, and some other challenges and fears. So that's the persona. So the next level underneath that is the kind of themes. So those individuals, what kind of business are they in? Mostly for our customers, they're solopreneurs, freelancers, or smaller businesses, right? People sub 50 employees. So someone that's sub 50 employees knows that they're pretty close to the coalface of running a business. So one of the main themes now is, scaling a business, building a business, and us sharing our experiences around that. So that's a theme. Even though we're not talking about social media technologies, it's all about creating affinity and creating engagement with an audience, as everyone in social will use that word. So that theme will be, small business growth. Another theme might be social media trends. Another theme might be content planning tips, for example. So out of that, I wouldn't do too many themes. We'd start with 3 rules of 3. It feels pretty comfortable. And then once you take those themes, you can now start creating content around those themes. So something around business growth, start with the opening strand to that theme, because each theme will spin off like a tree around the kind of different topics related to that theme. So a topic related to small business might be raising investment, might be dealing with objections, how to create leads. All of that, suddenly you're like, oh my God, I've got too much content that I just don't know where I should start first. And it's only when you have that conversation with people in person that they go, it's like a light bulb moment, like actually there is so much to say, because it's amazing how interesting things can be to other people. It's not interesting to us because we know, we live in this world, we know it. So, and someone said this to me the other day, because someone was running a course around like LinkedIn training. And I was like, interesting. Like the kind of stuff they were training, I was like, surely that's obvious. But the person that was talking to me was like, no, it's obvious to you, not to anyone else, because this is the world you live in. So I think once you do those themes and topics and work in that, you start to realize, actually, you know what? You do know stuff around certain things and you are very interesting. Because I think, Ian, you had actually done a piece around this. I can't remember what format it was in, but talking about like imposter syndrome. And it's a real thing, because when I started talking about stuff to do with business growth and, scaling a content marketing business, it's like the first, this is the first time of doing this. It's like the first time you running Confident Live Academy. It's the first time of you doing it. And we all suffer with that kind of imposter syndrome, inferiority complex. But in fact, actually, you know what you're doing. You've been there, you've done that. So you've got a lot of value. That was a massive tangent. Sorry.
No, that is absolutely brilliant. It kind of follows on really well from last week's podcast. We had Claire Yosa talking about how to tame your inner negative voice that we all have, which is kind of imposter syndrome, that kind of thing. So yeah, and you're so right with this whole thing of assuming that everyone else will know everything about what you do and your expertise. And I think I talked about this a couple of episodes ago where I was speaking at a conference where I had loads of questions from people. And one of the questions was, what is live video? And that, I just assumed everyone knew what it was. People are asking me very basic questions. So actually, we need to be going out there and answering the questions that our audience are asking. And a lot of the time, they'll be quite simple, quite basic. But we are going to be the best people to answer those questions because they're our audience. So I love that. Those themes that you were talking about and the persona. I struggled with those things for a while, and I wonder whether our listeners will be struggling with those things, because the whole idea of having a persona, it kind of feels like you have to kind of think of one person. So, for example, I've thought of mine as probably being female, but originally, I didn't want to do that because I know that I will have lots of male listeners to this, and I'm not just focused on females. But it's not to say that you are just by sticking with one, that you're somehow going to stop all other people watching or listening or reading your content. It's just, it really helps you with producing that content, I think. And then the second thing that I think was so important with what you were saying is the whole idea of themes. And again, I didn't think about this for ages until this podcast, and I've come up with 3 main themes to this podcast, which is the confidence in front of the camera, the technology, and then today's theme is the content and the marketing and how you come up with all of that. So you've made me feel better of actually doing something right.
There you go, nailed it. So
fab.
That's it. But when you explain it, it doesn't sound so complex anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You break it down like all of this stuff. It can be overwhelming very quickly. And this is the point about planning and getting things out from in your mind. And suddenly when you write it down and go, okay, so here's our persona, here's some 3 themes we're working to. And underneath those themes, let's put just for now 3 topics. So immediately what we've got is 9 different angles of content before we even talk about where that content could be distributed. So, and just you write that down in a little kind of like flow chart, and then suddenly, stick that up on your wall, and right there, that will at a high level, this is more kind of strategy than tactics, but from a strategic perspective, that's gonna see you right for the next month or 2, that's for sure.
No, that's great. I think one thing I've found really helpful is actually going out away from the office. If you've got a team, maybe get away from technology and just bounce ideas off people, and maybe just write something down in a notepad. But once we return to the office, we can rely on technology. Have you got some thoughts on this? Well, of course, I know you do have some thoughts on this, because obviously Content Cal is a tool that helps with planning that content. What's your view on, once you've got those ideas, or how do you use technology to actually make this whole process more productive?
So 3 ways. So number 1, having that kind of like flow chart that I've spoken about, persona, themes, topics, having that in a destination that you are not going to forget about it. Hiding it away in an Excel spreadsheet that you don't open again, no good. Having it somewhere that you visit every day, good thing. So, and I'm also a massive fan of like sticking things up on walls and, making it really visual, really real. Anyway, so it's creating that strategy and having that as a kind of a daily focus so you don't lose sight of it. 2, one of the things that's going to massively help reduce like the cognitive load of coming up with ideas. Because one of the hardest things about social, bar nothing, or social content in general, is just relentlessly coming up with ideas. Because you've got to be a creative, you've got to be a strategist, you've got to be a salesperson, a marketer, all in one to create content. But actually, one of the things to make sure that you keep your creative juices flowing is just being able to kind of plan things in our case with Content Cal in a calendar format. So you can say these certain national days or these things are happening on these key days. This might give me another opportunity for me to kind of, use that to leverage some other content when you're struggling with ideas. Also in things like Content Cal or, other tools, you can just store all of your ideas because, you mentioned the point about going out for a walk, for example. Ideas happen at sometimes the most inopportune moments. Yeah. And the irony of being creative, it happens when you're not trying. You're not sat there staring at a spreadsheet going, oh, right, what can I do this week? Actually, it's when your mind suddenly becomes free. And often with me, it's the point where I'm about to go to sleep. And your mind goes off into random tangents. And you're like, so I have a notepad next to my bed. I'm like, right, that's a good one. That's for tomorrow. But like Content Cal has that notion of like a pinboard section just to throw your ideas in that you just, you don't know what to do with them yet, but you'll probably use them again. So you've got just recap. So I'm on 2 out of 3 things. So 1, you've got like a daily visualization of like your high level strategy, persona, themes, topics. You've got a place where you can store your ideas and anything that might be happening on a kind of day-by-day calendar basis so that you're getting your creative juices flowing. It isn't like trying to plan from scratch every time. So already you've got a bit of a guide. And the third thing is that what we're big proponents of here is the methodology of COPE. So create once, publish everywhere, right? So, and this kind of falls into the content 10x thing when I said I kind of like their theory because, it's a theory we believe in. So obviously Content Cal is a place where you plan and also publish all of your content from. So you can publish to blogs, you can publish to, send content to email. You can plan your Facebook Lives, you can publish directly to Facebook, to your feed from there, publish to Instagram, publish to your stories on Insta. So you can send content in so many different places. So it gives you a perfect place to, once you've done your strategy, you've got your ideas, you've now got to the point where you're creating a live video, for example. That live video is just the start. So you've distributed it as we're distributing it today. But then the recorded version, for example, we can package up, push to YouTube. We can push it out to our mailing list. There's all of those things. So what you're doing, you're sticking together all of your planning and your distribution all into one place. Sorry, that sounded like a sales pitch. I didn't mean to be. Hopefully it was useful.
No, it wasn't a sales pitch. I mean, I think that's so you've just described the whole process of producing content, but not just the producing of the content, it's the planning of it. And then it's also the repurposing of content and getting it out to all those different networks out there, which is really important. And obviously there are other tools other than Content Cal. I haven't just got Andy on as a sales pitch, although I don't think it wasn't a sales pitch, but I really like Content Cal. It's a fabulous tool. It really does help, particularly if you've got a team. I love the whole pinboard thing and the whole idea of pinning ideas in the team. But even if you're just a solo business owner, it just helps you to get all that content down, and then it helps you plan it and then schedule, depending on how you pronounce it, out to the interwebs, which is really, really good. And it also, you're also able to do reports as well and analytics, aren't you? You can actually see, obviously you can get this on the individual networks, but Content Cal does do reporting too, doesn't it?
Yeah, I guess one thing to mention on that is because you can organize your content by theme and category, just as we were talking about before, that pulls through to analytics. So one thing that's really important, because say you've got your 9 different topics or 3 themes above those topics, you can organize the content and color code it across those themes. So that's what I said. It's like a monthly evaluation and evolution process. That at the end of month 1, you'll look at how your content's performed related to your theme of, in our case, small business growth, for example, or raising investment or whatever. And the themes that aren't performing well, aren't driving engagement, they get cut and replaced with other ones. So the ones that are doing well, they get a higher percentage share of the amount of content that we create for those. So really important. It's like a self-fulfilling thing. So that's why I'm like, just once you've got your high level plan that we're talking about, persona topics, themes topics. Once you've got that nailed, then just focus on the month, focus on being consistent, and then the data is going to inform you. As long as you're being consistent, the data is going to tell you something interesting on the for the following month.
That's so important. Yeah, that consistency is so important if you're going to actually get some proper detailed stats that you can rely upon. So yeah, whatever tool you're using, Facebook itself, you can look at the insights, but you're going to need to know which theme that you're using for each content, so you can actually get some really good statistics on there to see how you're doing, which is great. So do you know what, Andy, we could talk about this for probably a whole other podcast and more. There's so much to talk about, but we've run out of time. Just before we finish, I do like to ask all my guests this. You've done live video before, obviously, but this is a live video at the moment. Do you get nervous, and how do you get through those nerves if you do?
Yes, I do, and it's just preparation. I'll write down key areas that I want to speak about or talk about, and preparation is the only way that I feel most comfortable, really. So, like for example, in this call today, you had already pre-warned me what we're going to talk about, so I can. Got my notepad next to me of things to make sure we touch on. So it's. That's why I say for me, preparation is everything, really, as you probably tell.
Absolutely. Well, I love that. I'm very impressed with your notes. That's those are very, very impressive. Well, thank you so much, Andy. It's been great to have you on. We'll hopefully have you on in the future as well for another show, because I know that one of the big barriers that people have in producing live video is the content. They just don't know what to say. And, coming up with those themes, planning the whole process has been so important, and I've learned a lot from what you've been saying here today. So I thank you so much for being on. So
an absolute pleasure.
It's been great. So how can people find out more about you and find out more about Content Cal?
So Content Cal, find us at contentcal.io, and anyone's willing, anyone can ask me questions at any point. I'm on Twitter, Andy_R_Lambert, very catchy handle. But yeah, I'm sure Ian will mention that in the notes or whatever. I
will make sure we put that in the notes, and also a link to Content Cal as well. Is there any other resources you wanted to share with people? Anything at Content Cal that you've produced? I mean, we can put them in the show notes if you can't think of anything right now.
Yeah, I would say the free trial is a good thing to do and test out. Within that free trial, there's a bunch of content on content planning as well. Our YouTube channel, if you can stand any more of my voice, our YouTube channel is a bit of a resource for content planning nerds. So feel free to check that out.
That's fab. Well, again, I'll put that in the show notes. But thank you so much, Andy, for being my guest today. And thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Please do rate if you've enjoyed this. If you could go to iTunes and give it a 5-star rating, I would so love that. And until next time, I hope you can level up your impact, authority, and profits using the power of confident live video. See you next time. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Confident Live Marketing Podcast with Ian Anderson Gray. Be sure to join the community at iag.me, where you can continue to level up your impact, authority, and profits through the power of live video. And until next time, toodaloo.